Hey YouTube, right here. Um, I wanted to go ahead and touch on a subject that I've thought about before, and in all honesty, like I don't ever have a really clear cut answer. Well, at least I haven't until now. Um, it's kind of about console versus PC. Uh, there are people out there that ask why someone would want to go ahead and go with something that's going to be outdated, can't be upgraded, like a PC, doesn't have all the flexibility, has a single market, and so on and so forth. Um, and I kind of have an answer to that. Like, you have the answer of, well, in the past. But I'm looking at the here and now. Because in the past, it was because there wasn't as much knowledge about building your own gaming PC. Gaming PCs and parts were a lot more expensive. There wasn't as much going on for PC, and there were a lot more console exclusives because consoles were easier to program for. I don't know if that's still the case, but as far as the programming aspect, but it can't be too far off between the two anymore. But for me, one of the reasons was because with PC games, even if they had a console version, if you tried to play with a controller, and this wasn't all that long ago either, when you tried to play with a controller, it just felt clunky. It wasn't, it felt like you weren't supposed to be using a controller for it. Even though when you played on the console, the controller worked just fine. Come to find out, they were using a different conversion ratio and all that. But and some people say, oh well, mouse and keyboard's always better, and then you've got some people that say, well, no, controller's always better. um, Both of those camps are wrong. There are certain games where uh, PC and where on not PC but a mouse and keyboard is superior, and then there's some games where the controller is superior because the controller feels a lot more natural. Whereas with the mouse and keyboard, it feels clunky. Like for me, I actually tend to do pretty decent with first-person shooters with mouse and keyboard. I actually tend to do a little bit better with a controller. And yes, even on the PC, with no aim assist or anything like that, I actually tend to do a little bit better with the controller. I have a gaming mouse, I have a gaming keyboard, but the thing isn't the aiming itself. The problem isn't with the mouse; it's with the keyboard, because I'm able to move much more accurately with the controller as far as my actual character movement. Now, am I saying that that means that the controller is definitively better? No, I'm saying it's better for me. That's something that I prefer. So if a game comes out on PC and on console, and the PC version doesn't have coverage for the controller on the PC, of course I'm going to want to go with the console, because my method, my preferred method of controlling my character is supported on there while it isn't on the PC. That's not the most common thing anymore. I mean, they've pretty much got that down. They basically just poured over that base programming. And because consoles have gotten so close to just outright being a computer, just with very limited capability, I'm not going to deny that, then at that point, the PC, in my opinion, does beat out the console if it has the option for controller support. But there are some games where a controller is absolutely horrendous. And I mean, that's usually real-time strategy games, so games that usually don't affect me. Like I've said in the past, I don't really play real-time strategy games. I see the appeal to them, but they're just not for me. They don't keep me as engaged. Games like The Sims, again, it's the same general concept. Now, with Minecraft, I have no problems with mouse and keyboard, but that's because I got used to it. That was my first experience with it, so my brain programmed to that. But there's a game that I started playing on PC that I actually enjoy better on console. Warframe. Yeah, third-person shooter. Now, the reason is because as I'm moving, those keys are not set up in the most opportune position for me to go ahead and have shortcuts and all that. Because I have my mouse, which is controlling my aiming, right? But there's so many different things that you have to have hotkeyed, and if you're trying to move while hitting these hotkeys all at the same time, I mean, you've got your crouch, you've got your sprint, all right, fine. Those are the standard buttons on there. No problem. I have a gaming mouse, so I can go ahead and I have 4 extra buttons. But the problem comes down to when I need to make a small movement, I'm not capable of doing it. Whereas on the console, I'm able to have my character, take a, less than a millimeter step forward if I really want to. If I'm wanting to be that precise, I can go ahead and do it. Am I able to aim faster with the mouse and keyboard? Of course. But all the best aiming in the world doesn't matter if you can't move around, especially in a game that's designed around movement. That's one of the big things, is this thing combines parkour with ninjas and futuristic technology and multi-weapon types. It's absolutely fantastic. I love the game. But with mouse and keyboard, I am infinitely worse at the game. As soon as you throw a controller in my hands, I'm playing just as well as the people with the mouse and keyboard. In fact, people, when they see me playing with a mouse and keyboard, think that I'm playing with a controller. When I'm playing with a controller, they think I'm playing with the mouse and keyboard. So, obviously, the rule does not become standard for everyone. There's certain people that are better with a mouse and keyboard, and there are certain people that are better with with a controller. And I'm one of those people. I grew up with both. I played games on the PC. I played games on consoles. Well, once PC really started getting into the whole gaming scene. I mean, like way back in the day, video games were primarily console. At least games that appealed to my age range. But I hate seeing people saying that anyone who uses a controller is a scrub or something like that. It's funny because, those same people, when I'm going up against them and they're using a mouse and keyboard, those matches are either exceedingly close or I end up winning. And then the match is still exceedingly close. So if I'm a scrub, what is that saying about you? when a scrub actually stands a chance of beating you. Now, in Call of Duty or something like that, all right, fine. I concede mouse and keyboard definitely is going to take it. Except it doesn't. Not in my case. See, for me, mouse and keyboard is actually a very situational thing, whereas the controller tends to be the best out of all of it. Now you've got games like Minecraft, and also games like basically games where the movement is very rudimentary. The mouse and keyboard, I do better with it on that than I do with a controller, or at least just as well. But when you have advanced movement mechanics, combos, and so on and so forth that you have to hit, suddenly the controller's better because the buttons are in a more opportune position, a position that us as humans, our hands are meant to move in. It's actually kind of more of an ergonomic thing. Now, some people sit there and say, "Oh, well, it's because you're old." No, even when I was younger, it was the same fucking way. And the thing is having those buttons, yeah, you're limited on how many buttons you have, but you're limited on how many buttons you have access to anyway because of the limitation on your fingers. And the reach of your fingers. I don't know anyone that can reach clear across a keyboard, unless it's a mini keyboard, at which point you stand a really good chance of hitting multiple keys at the same time. Especially if you got fat fingers like me. So there's a limit. More is not always better, because at some point you get to the point where you're not able to utilize all of that more. So, but basically my final answer on it is, as far as my position on that argument is, if you prefer a mouse and keyboard for certain games, use a mouse and keyboard. If you prefer a controller for certain games, use a controller. Use what works best for you, what's going to allow you to play better. And there are people that are sitting there and saying, "Oh, if mouse and keyboard is allowed on consoles, it'll ruin the consoles because mouse and keyboard players are going to always be at the top." No, they're not. I'm walking proof of that. I've been up on leaderboards where I was the only one using a controller. On a couple of them, I was actually up on the top of the leaderboards consistently. But basically what it is stop with the whole purist bullshit. The only time I can sit there and get behind kind of a purist mentality is as far as cheats are concerned. I mean, if you're on an online game, don't use cheats. Period. But if you're on a single player game and you want to use cheats, go ahead. It's not affecting anyone else. Me, I don't use cheats until I'm like on my second, third, or even fourth run through of a game, just for the whole rampage thing, just for the fun, or to even make the game harder. It's kind of like on Minecraft, where people sit there and say that Project E or Equivalent Exchange, depending on what version you're using, it is way overpowered and it's really cheaty. Well, it can be, yeah. I'll agree with that. But also at the same time, the way that it's cheaty, if you decide not to use the armor or weapons or tools from it, which still take quite a bit to do anyway, but if you decide not to use those, it's actually not really all that cheaty. All it does is it takes out a lot of the grind. It takes out the RNG of it. Makes it to where you have to find one of something and then you can go ahead and create it by trading in things. Equivalent exchange. There you go. But certain people have issues with it, and I'm like, I wish that they would kind of do what basically Magical Crops did, as far as that's concerned. And I know I'm off topic, but what the fuck ever. It's my video. Shut the fuck up. But I wish they would do what Magical Crops did and have it where it's two separate mods, where you have the armory and then you have the core mod. If that was the case, I'd only use the core mod. I never use the armor unless I have no other armor mods in there or whatever. But usually I have Draconic Evolution, so I want to go ahead and go with that because that's an armor that you really have to fucking earn, and it's very late game armor. Whereas if you're willing to sit there and just basically AFK and have a automated cobblestone generator, you can end up going ahead and getting the end game armor from Equivalent Exchange or Project E in a few hours. And that's with you doing absolutely nothing other than coming back and making sure that your character is not starving to death. So I can see where people would have a problem with that. But in all honesty, like I said, as far as the whole purist thing, that's the only way that I can ever get behind a purist mentality is on your first playthrough of a game. Don't sit there and say that you beat the game if you use cheats. Don't do it. And no, I don't consider lowering the difficulty midway through the game because you just get stuck on a part and you just can't get past it cheating. I consider it cheap, but not cheating. But I just want to go ahead and be clear on this. When someone's using a controller, actually look at how they're doing compared to everyone else who's using a mouse and keyboard. And just remember, if they're doing just as well as everyone else and the controller's an absolute piece of shit like a lot of people say, then doesn't that mean that that person's showing more skill by actually going toe-to-toe with people who have a superior control scheme? Let's be honest. I mean, if you're in a competition and let's say you're in a running competition and someone has, a club foot or is actively missing a leg and doesn't have a prosthetic, they're literally running on one leg and they're only behind you by a millisecond or two at the end of the race. Are you going to look down on them? No. You're going to sit there and go, how the hell did you do that? What could you do with if you had the same... if you didn't have those handicaps? So let's cut the pretense here. A lot of the people that are sitting there and saying, oh, anyone who doesn't use a mouse and keyboard sucks, what they're really saying is I don't like that these people are using this alternative scheme and are doing just as well as me. It's kind of like how people sat there and tried to say that using basically programmable keys at the beginning when that first came out. They tried to say that that's cheating or that people that use that were scrubs, and now here everyone is using it. Consoles haven't used mouse and keyboard for a very valid reason. Because on their systems, those controls typically don't do as well. Now, should they offer it as an option? Yes, of course, they should. I think every console should allow mouse and keyboard. If for nothing else, then to just get everyone else to shut up. But then also you got people that have, that use controllers that are so scared of mouse and keyboard when they usually don't go up against people using a mouse and keyboard unless they're now using a mouse and keyboard, which seems foreign to their body. They don't have that muscle memory. Their brain is functioning on a different level. And so it makes it seem like the people with the mouse and keyboard are much more skilled. If you were to suddenly take these people who've only gamed with mouse and keyboard, throw a controller into their hands, they're probably not going to do as well as you at first, either. But it's one of those things that, you know, it takes practice. But like I said, there's also a limitation. I wish that there was a good way of hybridizing the mouse with a controller. I really wish that there was, because if there was a way to go ahead and do that, oh, you better believe I would be all over that. I'd be on that like a fly on shit. Because if I had the aiming accuracy of a mouse with the movement capabilities of a controller, no one would touch me. But unfortunately, it's just really not all that good. The only way I could think of would be like the Wiimote nunchuck thing. Maybe have that for your movement, and then have your aiming be a mouse. I could probably get behind that. In all honesty, that would probably end up working exceedingly well for me. If someone knows of a setup like that, let me know down in the comments. I'll definitely look into it, because at that point, hell, I might start going ahead and entering leagues once I get used to it. Once my brain sits there and goes, holy shit, you have accuracy on both hands? Shit, let's do this. But, no, honestly, if anyone watching this knows of a setup like that, let me know. Send me a link to it or whatever. Just let me know. If you go ahead and you put the link in there, I'll have to, of course, authorize it, but I'll definitely authorize it if it goes to a legit website. Or hell, even if you're linking another video. Hell, at that point, I'll probably go ahead and take it and put it in the description. So that way other people like me can know about it. But let's just go ahead and agree that certain people deal with different control schemes better under different situations. Unfortunately, there's no universal answer here. And trying to find a universal answer and then trying to fanboy what you think is the universal answer, even though other people are saying this doesn't work for me, instead of insulting them and go, oh, well, that sucks. Well, maybe you'll find one that works for you. Now, I know that the gaming world has gotten exceedingly toxic, and it's for multiple reasons. But it doesn't have to be toxic in every nook and cranny. Guys, let's stop with having to fanboy every last little fucking thing. Well, I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to end the video. And, like, honestly, I'm thinking about going ahead and putting my Steam ID down, so that way, if anyone who plays on PC, because right now I don't have a console. I ended up getting rid of my PlayStation 4 kind of out of blind rage from them screwing up with Final Fantasy VII and releasing it episodically. Then also, you know, the whole No Man's Sky thing, Destiny. I mean, it was the only good thing that I had gotten on the PlayStation 4 was Bloodborne. So I don't play on PlayStation anymore. I refuse to buy an Xbox One, and so yeah, so I play on PC. But I can go ahead and put that in there. I might feel free to go ahead, send a friend request, but also like send me a message, you know, like in the message, sit there and say, hey, I watch your channel. You know, if we have the same games, maybe we can go ahead and team up sometime. I would love to do that. But also be willing to use Discord, and not for text chat. I absolutely hate playing a game, having to then click over and type something into chat and then go back to the game, especially if it's an action-oriented game. Please don't expect me to do that. I won't do it. I'm going to be almost dead silent the whole time. However, if you've got voice chat, so if you got a mic and headphones, let me know. That's kind of a requirement for me when I'm playing with people. If they're doing text chat, I usually just type into the text chat. It's all like, don't really try to communicate with me. If there's something that you absolutely have to have me know, go ahead and do it. But I'm probably not going to catch 90% of what you're typing in chat, because I'm busy playing a game, not reading a novel. So, everyone have yourselves a great night. Take care of yourselves. Enjoy your gaming, however you game. Enjoy playing whatever games you enjoy playing. I'll talk to you later. Have a good night.